Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, the eminent Islamic theologian from the 10th century, and Abul Hasan al-Ash'ari, the influential scholar of the 9th and 10th centuries. Today they are brought together in an imaginative simulation to explore some of the profound debates in Islamic thought. Our journey takes us through three iconic cities: Samarkand, in present-day Uzbekistan, where Maturidi's ideas were formed in the renowned Ulugh Beg Madrasa; Baghdad in Iraq, the center of Ash'ari's theological contributions, where they gather in the al-Mustansiriya school; and Nishapur in present-day Iran, known for its vibrant intellectual life, where they meet in the great Nishapur Mosque. Their exchange will tackle three fundamental theological questions: the relationship between reason and revelation, the concept of human free will, and the nature of God's attributes. Drawing on Maturidi's Kitab al-Tawhid, the Book of Unity, and Ash'ari's Kitab al-Luma, the Book of Brilliance, we invite you to witness a debate that transcends time. The debate on reason and revelation.
Assalamu alaikum, dear brother Ash'ari. Today, we are here to discuss the relationship between reason and revelation. In my view, God has given humans reason so that they can understand creation and His existence. For example, when we observe the intricate design of nature, such as the perfect balance of ecosystems, reason allows us to recognize the existence of a creator. Therefore, reason is one of the most important tools for understanding and verifying revelation. The guidance of revelation is essential, and reason helps us to interpret and comprehend it. Revelation provides the ultimate truth, and reason allows us to appreciate and internalize that truth.
Wa alaykum assalam, Maturidi. Reason is indeed a valuable gift, but I want to emphasize the limits of reason in the face of revelation. Human reason is limited and fallible, which means it cannot fully comprehend the truths revealed by God. For instance, consider the concept of the afterlife. It is beyond human understanding, and reason alone cannot grasp its full reality. Revelation conveys absolute knowledge beyond our reason. Our reason can only attempt to understand these truths, but questioning them by overstepping its boundaries is misguided.
Ash'ari, I must insist that without acknowledging the role of reason, we risk undermining our ability to truly understand the divine message. Reason is a divine gift meant to guide us, and without it, how can we distinguish between right and wrong? The intricate order in the universe speaks to the necessity of reason in understanding God's will. Revelation is indeed the ultimate source, but reason is the means through which we access and comprehend it.
Maturidi, I respectfully disagree. Reason has its limits, and over-reliance on it can lead us astray. Revelation is the ultimate truth, and while reason can support our understanding, it must never take precedence over what has been revealed. The mysteries of the afterlife and divine decree are beyond human comprehension, and attempting to fully grasp them through reason alone is futile. God's wisdom is not bound by the limits of human intellect.
But Ash'ari, consider the ethical dilemmas we face in our daily lives. Reason allows us to evaluate situations and make moral choices. For instance, when deciding how to treat others, reason helps us understand the consequences of our actions and align them with the principles of justice found in Revelation. How can we fulfill God's commands without understanding them through reason?
I understand your point, Maturidi, but I believe that the ultimate source of morality is revelation, not reason. Consider the acts of worship that have been prescribed to us, such as prayer or fasting. These are commands from God that reason alone may not fully justify, yet we follow them because they are divinely ordained. Our duty is to obey, even if our limited intellect cannot comprehend all the wisdom behind these commands.
Yet, even in acts of worship, reason plays a role. Take, for example, the concept of intention, niyyah, in prayer. It is through reason that we understand the importance of sincere intention, which makes our worship meaningful. Without reason, how would we differentiate between a genuine act of devotion and a mere mechanical ritual.
I see your point, but there are limits to how far reason can take us. The divine mysteries, such as the nature of God or the reality of the afterlife, are beyond human comprehension. Reason can guide us to a certain extent, but ultimately we must submit to the truths revealed to us, even if they transcend our understanding. True faith requires accepting that some things are beyond the grasp of reason.
I agree that there are mysteries beyond our understanding, but I believe God has given us reason precisely so that we can seek understanding to the best of our abilities. Ignoring reason would mean neglecting one of God's greatest gifts to humanity. Reason and revelation are not in conflict. Rather, they complement each other, guiding us towards a deeper understanding of the divine. Revelation is the foundation, and reason is the tool to build upon that foundation.
And I maintain that while reason is valuable, it must always be secondary to revelation. The essence of submission is to trust in God's wisdom, even when our intellect falls short. We may use reason to enhance our understanding, but it should never lead us to question the truths that God has revealed. Our faith lies in accepting the divine knowledge that surpasses human limitations.
The debate on human free will.
Today I propose we discuss the concept of human free will and its relationship with divine decree. I believe that while humans have the ability to will, it is ultimately God who creates our actions. For example, when we decide to move our hand, the intention is ours, but the power to carry out that movement is created by God. This ensures that God's absolute sovereignty is maintained. If humans could independently create their own actions, it would imply that there is a power apart from God's will, which contradicts his omnipotence.
I understand your point, but I find it problematic to deny the true freedom of our will. Without genuine autonomy, the concept of divine justice becomes difficult to reconcile. If God preordains every action, then how can we justify holding individuals accountable for their deeds? Consider the actions of a tyrant who oppresses the weak. If their actions were entirely determined by God's will, would it be just to punish them for their tyranny? True justice requires that individuals have the freedom to choose, and thus bear responsibility for their actions.
Your concern for justice is valid, Maturidi, but we must remember that God's justice is not like human justice. His wisdom encompasses realities that are beyond our comprehension. Humans have a form of will, but it is not absolute. It operates within the framework of God's creation. Consider a person who wills to commit a wrongful act. They intend it, but the realization of that action still depends on God's permission. This dependence on God does not negate human accountability, but it shows that our existence and actions are always under God's ultimate authority.
Yet, by denying full autonomy to human will, we risk undermining the very purpose of divine tests. Life is a test, and the choices we make determine our outcome in the hereafter. Take, for example, the decision to act with honesty in a challenging situation. If our choices are not truly ours, how can we say we are being tested? A test implies genuine choice and the ability to succeed or fail based on our decisions. Therefore, human freedom must be real for the test of life to hold any meaning.
I do not deny that life is a test, Maturidi, but the test is within the scope of God's will. Our choices are real in the sense that we will and intend them, but they are brought into existence by God's creative power. Think of it as a partnership. We intend and God creates. This understanding upholds God's absolute control while preserving a degree of human responsibility. True submission lies in recognizing that even our ability to choose is granted by God, and we must trust in His wisdom regarding our fate.
I still believe that for justice and accountability to be meaningful, human will must be genuinely autonomous. Without true freedom, the rewards for good deeds and the punishments for sins lose their significance. If our actions are predetermined, then morality itself becomes an illusion. We must uphold the notion that God, in His wisdom, has given us the capacity to freely choose, and it is through these choices that we demonstrate our faith and moral integrity.
And I hold that God's will is paramount, Maturidi. Human freedom exists, but it is always within the bounds set by God's decree. To think otherwise would be to attribute a degree of independence to creation that belongs solely to the Creator. Our responsibility is to act with the understanding that while we choose, it is God who ultimately brings our actions into reality. This is what it means to truly submit to God's will, acknowledging His supreme authority over all things.
The debate on God's attributes.
Let us delve into the nature of God's attributes and their relationship to His essence. I believe that God's attributes, such as His knowledge, power, and mercy, are distinct from His essence, but are not separate entities. They are eternal and have always existed with God, yet they cannot be equated directly with His essence. For instance, God's attribute of knowledge is not the same as His essence, but neither is it something apart from Him. This distinction preserves the concept of Tawhid, oneness of God, ensuring that we do not attribute parts or divisions to the divine essence.
I understand your concern, Ash'ari, but I see God's attributes as intrinsic to His essence. The attributes of God are not distinct entities. They are expressions of His perfect being. For example, when we speak of God's knowledge, it is not something separate from Him. It is an integral part of who He is. By making a distinction between the attributes and the essence, we risk implying that God is composed of parts, which contradicts the idea of His absolute simplicity and unity. God's attributes are not added to His essence, they are inherent to it.
My intention is not to imply that God is composed of parts, Maturidi. Rather, I argue that the distinction helps us avoid conflating God's essence with His attributes in a way that could lead to misunderstanding His nature. For example, if we say that God's knowledge is identical to His essence, we might fall into the trap of anthropomorphism, attributing human-like qualities to the divine. The attributes are expressions of God's actions and qualities, but they are not the same as His essence. This distinction helps preserve the uniqueness and transcendence of God.
I appreciate your careful approach, but I believe that separating the attributes from the essence, even conceptually, creates unnecessary complexity. God's essence is beyond human comprehension, but His attributes are how He reveals Himself to us. For instance, His attribute of mercy is not an external quality, but a reflection of His very being. God's oneness is absolute, and His attributes are simply facets of that oneness. By emphasizing their unity, we avoid any implication that God could be divided into different aspects or components.
The challenge, Maturidi, lies in our limited human understanding. We must acknowledge that our language and concepts are inadequate to fully describe God's nature. The distinction between essence and attributes is a way to protect the doctrine of Tawhid from any misunderstandings that might arise from equating God's attributes with His essence. For instance, when we say that God is all-powerful, we mean that His power is an expression of His will, but we cannot fully grasp the nature of that power. By maintaining a conceptual distinction, we safeguard the transcendence of God.
While I agree that human understanding is limited, I maintain that emphasizing the unity of God's essence and attributes is essential to preserving the true concept of Tawhid. God's attributes, such as His knowledge, power, and mercy, are not separate or distinct. They are intrinsic to His divine nature. Any conceptual distinction risks diminishing the absolute unity of God. The attributes are how we understand His interactions with creation, but they are inseparable from His essence. To truly grasp the oneness of God, we must affirm that His attributes and essence are one and the same.
The debate between Maturidi and Ash'ari on reason, revelation, human free will, and God's attributes is more than just an intellectual exercise from the past. It continues to resonate today, reminding us of the depth and complexity of Islamic theology. The differences in their perspectives highlight the diversity of thought within the Islamic tradition, offering us a richer understanding of the divine and the various dimensions of human agency and responsibility, and the ways in which humans seek to know God. To learn more about the teachings of Maturidi and Ash'ari, Click the link at the corner of your screen, where you'll find books and resources on this fascinating topic. Thank you for spending your time with us at Attic. We hope you enjoyed this journey through the timeless debates of Islamic thought. Until next time, may your pursuit of knowledge be fruitful and fulfilling.